Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to be all about non-playable characters in Dragalia Lost who I wish were playable. The game is in its final week before the end of service, and I wanted to make this video for a couple of reasons. Obviously, these characters are not going to be playable with just a week left, but I still think it's fun to think about some of the possibilities and have some fond memories over characters that we got to spend so much time with over the past 4 years. And second, I also think that it's cool to get to see some of these characters who have really elaborate artwork, in some cases, really interesting backstories, and yet a lot of the player base might not know about them because they may have been limited to an adventure story or tied to a particular event. So I wanted to make this video to highlight some of the broader range of characters outside of playable adventures and dragons who appear in Dragalia Lost and just count through some of the possibilities. And you never know, maybe one day Dragalia Lost 2 or Dragalia Lost Redive, some of these characters will be indeed playable. So starting things off, I just had to share these portraits of Morsayadi on the left and Alburius on the right, because don't these just look like super awesome adventure portraits? These exist in the game's assets. All of the images that I pulled today are available on the Dragalia Lost wiki if you want to check them out for yourselves. And I just had to use these for the thumbnail because I think that they look so cool. These are characters I would love to have playable, of course. Alongside them, Vagabond Pupper, have to throw him a bone, of course. And also Nephrin, one of the few characters who appears on a worm print but does not even have a portrait or appear in any kind of story. She's a true enigma of a character. Anyway, let's move on. And the first group of characters I want to talk about that are not playable but I really wish would have been are the other Worm Clan leaders. We actually got 7 Worm Clan leaders, even though Dragalia Lost was only around for 4 years. So we got Ieyasu, representing the year of the boar. We also got Mitsuhide for the year of the rat, and Nobunaga for year of the horse. And then the following year, we got Seimei for ox and Yoshitsune for rooster. And then finally, we ended up getting Shingen for tiger, and we also got for monkey, Yukimura. So we got 7 in total, 1 the first year and 3 every subsequent year, but we were missing 5 of the Worm Clan leaders from Hinamoto, those being the dog, snake, goat, rabbit, and dragon as the remaining Zodiac characters. And we even got this really cool art during one of the related events that actually showed the characters, and it's not quite possible to tell exactly who is which of the Zodiac members. It seems pretty clear the ones in the center correspond to the snake and the goat or ram, respectively. But the other ones, I'm not totally sure which of them is the rabbit versus the dog versus the dragon. So a little bit of mystery to these characters, but don't all of them just look awesome? I wish they had been playable. Anyway, we move on to a few more characters from Hinamoto. So on the left is Nazuna. You may not know this character if you never read Mitsuba's adventure story, but it's actually Mitsuba's younger sister. She got a unique artwork and everything and has her abacus. I think it'd be really fun if she was implemented kind of like a mathematician type character that you see in some tactics games. It's a pretty rare class in RPGs, but there's this character that depending on like the height of terrain or even or odd HP, like they have weird properties and do weird effects. There's a character like that in Triangle Strategy, a game that released earlier this year. I think it's like a barrel-shaped character. It's a pretty rare class. It's maybe a deeper cut, but I just like that abacus she has. But she's definitely a business-minded person. And there's even more siblings in Mitsuba's family, I think 7 in total. So there could be a lot of characters spawning off of her. But anyway, the second character in the center is Domon. Of course, Domon was a member of the Mukuroshu. And if you just look at the detail on his artwork, doesn't it just feel like he, at one point, they wanted to make him a playable character? I mean, I just love the detail in his artwork. And with that devilish smile, I mean, you can't have a better, more attractive and appealing villain than that. And then finally on the right rather, is Rikuga. So Rikuga is a Shikigami of Seimeis. You might know this character by the marvelous Naoto. That's how the character was first introduced. If you know the fate of this character, it's unlikely that they would get an alt, but it still would have been kind of cool, or rather a playable version. It still would have been kind of cool since they were a really appealing design for an NPC in the Rhythmic Resolutions. I think that was the name of the event. It was a facility event that featured Eugene and Catherine, where this character first appeared. I really like the character. There's also a musical theme. They could maybe play with energy, maybe energy that worked under Curse of Nihility, who knows? But anyway, we move on to another set of characters who I really would have loved to see completed and all playable. That's going to be the remaining Agito. And honorable mention / shout out to Jinlorda on the right there. Jinlorda being always by Nedric's side. You know, you have to consider him an honorary member of the Agito, even though he was never like a proper boss. I guess there was a boss fight in the story against Brunhilde with his apotheosis ability, but that was about it. But although some of these Agito did have playable forms, I would love for all of them to have had an adventure form and a dragon form. So for instance, for Volk and Ciela, we did get their Gala Beast dragon forms, both fantastic by the way, but I would have loved them to actually have an adventurer form too. With Ayaha and Tatoha, the opposite was true, where we got her in adventurer form, but we never got a Gala Beast dragon associated with her. Although at least you got to play as her dragon form with the adventurer character. And then for Kayan and Tartarus, sadly we neither got an adventure nor a dragon form for them, but those would have been really fun to play as well. And Tartarus, being a dragon, I think could have had some interesting mechanics in the adventure kit also. I guess all of them would probably have lock transformations either way, but I still think it'd be kind of cool. Anyway, that brings me to another set of bosses, the Sinister Dominion, a little bit lower on my list of characters I would want playable. The Agito would definitely top them, but you still have to admit that these have an appealing design. I think Iblis especially stands out to me as the most appealing. The others, you know, maybe they could have just been dragons of some kind rather than actually being playable characters. So maybe take it or leave it. I also threw Satan's portrait on there just because such a unique character, villain to have in the game. And also I want to mention in showing these, there's also the fallen angel forms of the archangels. And if you think about it, we never really got their transformed states. With all the lore about Metatron, and with us getting a transformed state for Sandalphon, with her being an adventurer, and then transforming into her special heavenly wing state, how cool would it have been to get a playable Ramiel, for example, an adventure Ramiel, or Gabriel, or Uriel, or Michael, etc. That would have been very, very sweet as well. So I have to give them special mention. Moving on, though, some more dragons potentially here. The other primal dragons. You hate to see a cycle go unfinished, at least I do. So the fact that we have Midgard Swarmer 0 technically maybe doesn't count as a primal dragon because kind of lives in a weird space, sort of. Maybe we'd actually get a separate primal Midgard Swarmer dragon, but effectively pretty strong. And then we have Primal Brunhilde. I mean, it's the primal design, so I think Midgard Swarmer counts. But we never got anyone past that playable. We got them as bosses, so if we could have had playable Primal Mercury and Primal Jupiter, Primal Zodiac, that would have been really awesome. Primal Chthonius, RIP, I don't think it would have ever happened, even if we got the rest of the Primal Dragons. But moving on, some more missing dragons, and many of these I think players may not be aware of. So starting off on the left, Tsukuyomi, at least we finally got her as a raid boss in the very end, toward the final days of the game. Her event was just rerun, so you were able to battle against her. Actually a pretty sweet design in the raid battle, and she has a really nice intro animation. It still would have been nice to be able to summon her as a dragon. Second, Uranus, Ferris's Pact Worm in the middle there. such a really cool, ferocious looking dragon. I think sagacious dragon. Is that how you pronounce that? Wise dragon. I should stick to words that I know, huh? But in fact, this dragon is one that was experimented on by Ferris and ultimately killed, leading Ferris to a tremendous amount of grief. So you'd have to maybe go back in time or do some shenanigans, or just make this dragon like a special Gala dragon that has no connection to the storyline. Still, I think it's just such a cool design. It's a shame that it's not summonable or playable. Moving on to Fafnir Roy III there. Fafnir Roy, Keeper of the Treasury, the boss of the Mercurial Gauntlet. Would have been a nice little nod in the treasure trade, let's say. Maybe give you like all the benefits of the various gold, silver, and bronze Fafnirs at once, and like a player EXP benefit. It could have been a really cool farming dragon of some kind. And then finally in the bottom right is Atlas, and there's no portrait of Atlas that I could find, but Atlas is the brother to Prometheus, Epimetheus, and Menoetius, and Atlas appeared in 2 online Dragalia minis webcomics on Twitter. I don't think both of these got translated to English. I could be wrong on that. So I had to find this screenshot of one of them. But yes, we never got the 4th in this set of, or I guess in this quartet of brothers. The 4th being Atlas. So definitely looks like a water element dragon. That would have been a pretty cool dragon to pick up. But let's move on from the dragons back to more adventurers. So starting off with some parental figures here in this friends and family category. Of course, Alberius in the center. We showed him off already on the thumbnail and the first page of this. It's basically a slideshow, so yeah, first page is probably fair. But also, it would have been cool to have like a fallen hero or villain form. You see that in some gachas, right? Like Fire Emblem Heroes has a whole series of the corrupted alts of our heroes and our main characters. It would have been kind of neat to get the other affected Alberius and the other affected Zethia, or the other affected Yuden from alternate worlds as a playable character. That would have been pretty interesting. Otherwise, some pretty standard familiar faces here. So Zacharias on the left is Ronzel's dad. Surprising appearance late in the story, out of nowhere. Finn Lorda, of course, Jin Lorda's dad, next to him. And then on the other side of the screen are Luca and Cerise's parents. I feel like their portraits, their designs are pretty well known since they've been in the game's assets and some of the stories for a while now. I don't think that they're named. I could be wrong on that, but in English, I don't think they're named at least. And yeah, I think both of them they're cool. I mean, Cerise, Luca, very popular characters. I don't really know if they're fighters or what they would exactly do in combat. I think that could be said for many of these characters aside from Alberius, but it would still be kind of neat to have them appear in like a skill animation or something. Maybe just a little nod. It's that type. Anyway, moving on to some more characters. So first up, we have Xion, who is Delphi's younger brother, cares about Delphi very deeply. I think also a tutelary. So Xion, his design stands out, right? It's not a generic NPC. So same thing I was saying about Mitsuba's younger sister earlier. This would be a pretty fun character to have playable. Next up, Baron, the 5th scion. Of course, Baron, the one sibling who we weren't able to recruit. I think, maybe in the very end we may have gotten through to, but with the way the story panned out, it doesn't seem like a character who would have been releasable until after that final point. If we could have gotten Xenos to be playable, the progenitor, that would be also pretty sweet. And then on the right, Becky and Sandy. So the friends of Catherine from Quinn Bell from that same event that also featured Naoto at the end. They're just uniquely designed characters. There's nothing necessarily special about them. They actually did appear on a worm print, a Halloween worm print though, alongside Catherine, so they do have that distinction among NPCs, which is pretty rare. I just think they'd be kind of fun, maybe like a duo character of some type. Alright, so the last set of characters in this group. First up, we have Premia on the left. She's a princess from North Grastia, and Valerio was sworn to protect her. So a bit of backstory there if you haven't read Valerio's adventure story. But again, a character I think who has a unique design. She might have been a cool character to bring in to like one of the Princess Connect collabs. Next to her is actually a character called Red Champ, Yuya's Rooster. And I wanted to include this alongside Phaidon and Felix, those two dragons you can see. Those are Xainfried's dragons. And Mao Mao, the panda there, that's Linyu's disciple. Just because we do have a lot of these like adorable companion characters. I feel like all the characters on screen right now are adorable. But these companion characters, they would have made nice, like, lesser dragons. Sort of like how we had the mini dragons where you befriend them. I don't know if a chicken or rooster, rather, can technically qualify as a dragon, but, you know, they're still pretty neat little characters, aren't they? Maybe a weapon skin of some kind. In the center, one who I do think, if we had gotten another event focused on the Abyssians, would have been playable. Tiana is one of the only Abyssian characters that we really have. I'm kind of surprised Siren got such a blowout treatment with like unique music and multiple alts right away that first summer after Dragalia Lost released. And Tiana seems like a character who deserves that same level, especially being a unique character as an Abyssian. I think she would have been a fun character to have released. And then finally, on the far right, one of the few Roken characters, Angie. Angie is actually Gald's granddaughter, so you may be a Gald fan. Gald's one of the older characters in the game, like kind of a unique design. I think also one of the last few 4-star characters that was released from what I remember. Maybe my timing's a little off with that, but he was a 4-star character at a minimum, and those, well, they disappeared after a while. So Angie is just so precious and so adorable. You know, if Pia can be a playable character, I feel like these characters could also be made playable in a very cute way. So moving on from some of the heroes of our story, there's also a lot of villains with unique artwork in Dragalia Lost. So not going to talk about all of the backstories here, but I put villains of the week just because there really are like villains for all of the events that happen in Dragalia Lost, and many that only appear in adventure stories or side stories as well. So the ones I wanted to focus on, because I think they have the coolest designs and are sort of the most interesting characters, are on the left there. So Jake, with the dragon wing and the green hair, is a Syndicate commander. Now, Jake sort of had a friendship with Farron in the final Syndicate event. It didn't go so well. I don't know, what befell Jake exactly. It doesn't seem likely that he would be a playable character, but he did have a very unique design, so I thought that was kind of cool. And then Dorothy, that's a design that could straight up become an adventure right away. Like, there's so much detail in her crazy, colorful outfit, murderous detail, I should say, like the spikiness of it. I think that she would immediately become a popular character. She is an assassin and kind of a rival character to Alex. And so she appears in several stories related to Alex, I believe, and Elisanne. The other character I kind of want to mention among the big group of characters on the right is that Imperial soldier with the purple armor, because that is not just any Imperial soldier that I'm thinking of. I'm specifically thinking of Saboa. So Saboa is Emil's sort of chief retainer. He's a recurring soldier that appears in Emil-related stories. I just think it would be funny, kind of like a gatekeeper, right? Like Fire Emblem's gatekeeper from Three Houses actually won a Choose Your Legends event, became a playable character. We need that kind of energy, that kind of character in Dragalia Lost, I feel. So that was a character I thought could have some very funny mechanics, like summoning in Imperial soldiers. It would just be a good character for shenanigans, much like Emil himself is, although Emil ended up being quite powerful. So otherwise, rounding out the characters there, we have Wu Wei, who's one of the few Chillin characters and kind of a rival or villain in Linyu's story. we have Anasa, who is one of the robots or androids that's part of Ex Machina, a villain in Irene and Feeney's story. In the front, we have August with that, I guess, scanner on one of his eyes is from the before times in Ilya's event where she made her debut. And then behind August is the Doctor, one of the villains who's part of the Syndicate. And in front of him, Picaro, the rival chef to Mitsuba and Valerio in their cooking competition. In front of him is Cardinal Grot. So Grot worked with Auriga, did a lot of bad stuff in North Grastia, led to a lot of bad things happening in Grams. Not necessarily like the most interesting character, though, I'll admit. And then finally, in the back right is Bereed, a very menacing design, I feel. Again, one of the few characters who's a Roken character, and he's a villain that used to be aligned with Gald in the past, but not so much in Gald's adventure story. So those are some of the villain characters in Dragalia Lost. Lesser villains for sure, but ones, at least a couple stand out as maybe being fun were they to be playable. So finally, those are all of the non-playable characters as such, but there are a few portraits, a few sets of artwork that I just wanted to show. These are alts that are non-playable characters. So these people have playable forms. But as a bonus, here are some of the really cool designs I thought for alts that could be fun. So on the left, we have Child Louise. If Child Ronzel was playable, then I think Child Louise should have been playable in that Elementary Escapades event. I think that her design is compelling enough and very cute. Of course, you could say the same about Child Ellie and Child Alex. They're super adorable. Maybe not as equipped for combat as Louise looks, but nevertheless, I think that they would be really fun to have playable, especially, again, as like a duo or tandem type of character. After that is Aldred. I think it's Aldred. I guess it's left a bit mysterious, but in a special sort of Dragon Drive, Kamen Rider, Power Ranger form. We never really got to find out the full details on that. It seems like that was left as a cliffhanger, but I think were that to have come back, we definitely would have gotten that as a playable alt of some kind. Next up is Halloween Yuden. Yuden has had a lot of good-looking alts in promotional artwork and so on that people really wanted to be playable in Wormprints, and this is to me one of the best ones that I think people would have really liked to have playable. So yeah, that Halloween portrait is very, very well illustrated. So you would think, maybe, just maybe, it could have been possible, but Yuden got very few alts. The prince got very few alts over the years. After that is a character from the facility event featuring Karina and, Karina and Lapis. I think it's Phantom's Ransom or The Phantom's Ransom. And I think was Giovanni in it too. I know that he appeared as a dragon around that time. But anyway, it's heavily implied that Lapis is Belladonna. But that character, the singer there, is Belladonna. So maybe we could get an alt where she's actually in her opera getup. And finally on the right is Cecile when she was in the Knights Academy. Before she got her Manitou addiction, before we got the Manicaster variant of her that we ultimately meet in the story. Her event was also rerun recently. Just a cool outfit, and I think it'd be fun to get some more story with her, Harl, and Leaf. But that is pretty much going to do it for today, everybody. Those are all the non-playable characters I wish were playable in Dragalia Lost. Had a lot of fun reminiscing about them and just thinking about the possibilities of what could have been. Hopefully you saw something cool in this video, at least maybe one character that you didn't know about, weren't familiar with. Once again, all of these assets are from the Dragalia Lost wiki, so a link will be in the description below. And definitely check that out in the future if you're interested in Dragalia Lost lore and content even after the end of service. The stories are there. A lot of good information and good content is there. So that's one to bookmark if you're a Dragalia Lost fan for the inevitable return one day of Dragalia Lost. I think it'll happen. I have hope still. But that's going to do it for today. Like I said, let me know in the comments below if there are any characters I didn't mention here, dragons, adventurers that could have been, what your thoughts are on them, and let me know some of the ones that you were most looking forward to. But like I said before, that's all for today. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.